The afternoon sun spilled golden light through the kitchen window, illuminating the small space that had become a sanctuary for me. I stood at the counter, slicing ripe tomatoes for the salad, their juice trickling down my fingers, the scent of basil mingling in the air. This was my world, a cozy home filled with the remnants of laughter, memories, and the weight of unspoken words. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with life, children playing, cars honking, a stark contrast to the silence that often enveloped our house. My husband, Marcus, had just left for work, and I could still hear the echo of his footsteps retreating down the hallway. The front door clicked shut with a finality that left a hollow space inside me. He had always seemed proud to call me his wife, at least in the early days of our marriage. Back then, our love had been a vibrant tapestry, woven with dreams and aspirations, but slowly, the colors had begun to fade. It was only after our daughter, Mia, was born that I started to sense a shift in Marcus. As if the very act of parenthood had introduced a divide between us, one that grew wider with each passing day. He began spending more time at work, leaving early and returning late, always with an excuse, always justifying the distance. I often wondered if it was the weight of responsibility that pushed him away or something deeper, something buried beneath layers of pride and societal expectations. The phone rang, breaking my reverie. It was my friend, Rita, a cheerful voice that often contrasted with my own somber thoughts. "Hey, girl. How are you?" she asked, her enthusiasm spilling over the line like a warm embrace. "I'm okay," I replied, trying to summon some of her brightness. "Just making lunch." "Still in that kitchen? You should get out more. Come to the park with us. Mia misses you." Rita's voice was full of life, but I could hear the concern simmering beneath her cheerful words. I know. It's just, you know how it is." I forced a laugh, but it felt brittle. "Listen, I'll pick you up in an hour." "No excuses," Rita insisted, her determination igniting a spark of hope within me. Maybe I could escape the confines of my kitchen, even if only for a little while. I needed it, I realized. I needed to breathe outside of my role as a wife and mother, to reclaim parts of myself that had been swallowed by the demands of family life. After hanging up, I took a moment to look around the kitchen, at the carefully curated decor, the little touches I had added over the years. Each item told a story: the framed photographs of happier times, the recipe cards passed down from my grandmother, the mismatched plates that somehow felt like home. But as I turned to the window, a chill ran down my spine. A black car had pulled up in front of our house, sleek and unfamiliar. My heart raced as I watched two sharply dressed men emerge, the sunlight glinting off their sunglasses. I felt exposed, like a character in a play I had not auditioned for. I instinctively straightened my apron and brushed my hair behind my ear, suddenly aware of my appearance. I had not dressed up today. The faded jeans and loose t-shirt were comfort clothes, not presentation attire. The men approached our door, and dread pooled in my stomach. It was the kind of moment that felt pivotal, a juncture where everything could shift. I held my breath, caught between curiosity and anxiety, and waited. The door opened, revealing Marcus, his face shifting from surprise to something I couldn't quite read. He greeted the men with a professional nod, but there was an awkwardness in his posture, as if he were uncertain about the dynamics of this interaction. My heart sank as I recalled the whispers I had overheard at gatherings, comments about my role in our household, and how Marcus often introduced me. "Here's my maid," he would say with a half-hearted chuckle, as if it were an inside joke. Those words cut deeper than any knife. They lingered in the air like a ghost, haunting the spaces between us. Would he do it again? Would he cast me in that role today, just when I had hoped for something more? The tension was palpable, and I knew in that moment that my life was about to change forever. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart racing as Marcus ushered the men inside. They shook hands with an ease that contrasted sharply with the rising tide of unease within me. I was a bystander in my own home, an intruder in a scene I hadn't expected to play out in front of me. I clutched the edge of the countertop, the cool surface grounding me as I watched the interactions unfold like a slow-motion film. "Can I get you something to drink?" I managed to say, my voice a fragile thread straining against the weight of my emotions. I was met with polite nods, but the way Marcus glanced at me, a fleeting look that darted away before I could decipher its meaning, sent a chill down my spine. "Water would be great," one of the men replied, his tone friendly yet authoritative. I busied myself with filling glasses, each splash of water echoing my inner turmoil. I could feel the tension in the air, a thick cloud hovering over us, and it weighed heavily on my chest. As I handed them their drinks, I forced a smile, a mask to hide the hurt threatening to spill over. "It's nice to meet you," I said, hoping to bridge the gap that had formed. They nodded politely, but I felt like a ghost in my own home, invisible and unacknowledged. Marcus took a seat at the dining table, gesturing for the men to join him. "We were just discussing the new project at work," he said, his voice steady, but I sensed the undercurrents of discomfort beneath his calm facade. The conversation flowed easily between them, filled with business jargon and corporate lingo that left me feeling adrift. I hovered near the kitchen, acutely aware of my surroundings and the fading warmth of the interactions that used to fill this space with laughter. With each passing moment, I felt more isolated. My mind wandered to the countless times I had prepared dinners to celebrate Marcus's achievements, each dish infused with love and pride. Yet here I was, reduced to the role of a servant, a shadow of the vibrant woman I had once been. I could feel the tightness in my chest, the familiar ache of inadequacy creeping back in. "What's the plan for the weekend?" one of the men asked, leaning back in his chair as he casually glanced at me. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to me before looking away. "Just some family time," he replied, his voice laced with hesitation. "You know how it is." I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. How did he see our life? Was it simply a collection of responsibilities? Had he truly forgotten the joy of our shared moments, the small adventures that made our lives rich and fulfilling? "Sounds great," one of the men replied, oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. I forced a smile again, but this time it felt even more fragile. The words stuck in my throat as I fought to keep the tears at bay. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was an outsider in my own home, an embarrassment to the man I loved. After a few moments of strained conversation, I decided to step outside. The sun was still shining brightly, but it felt distant, as if it were illuminating a different world. I needed air, space to breathe and gather my thoughts. I walked into the backyard, the familiar garden offering some solace as I immersed myself in the vibrant colors of the flowers blooming all around me. I knelt down to pull a few weeds, letting the earth beneath my fingers provide a momentary distraction. Each tug was a small release, a way to process the chaos swirling in my mind. I thought about Marcus and how he had once adored me, how he had lifted me with his words, his laughter. But now, those very words felt like chains, binding me to an identity I no longer recognized. As I pulled the stubborn weeds, I caught sight of my reflection in the garden's small mirror, a moment of clarity in the midst of confusion. The woman staring back at me had a spark in her eyes, one that had dimmed over the years, overshadowed by feelings of inadequacy and shame. I could almost hear her whispering, urging me to reclaim my voice, to stand tall against the shadows of perception that loomed over me. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Marcus stepped outside. He stood at the threshold, watching me with an unreadable expression. "I thought I'd find you out here," he said softly, his voice cutting through the tension that hung in the air. I straightened up, brushing dirt from my hands, and looked at him, searching for the warmth that had once filled our home. "You should have introduced me, Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not just your maid, I'm your wife." A silence enveloped us, heavy with unspoken truths. It felt like the first time we were truly seeing each other in a long time, a moment fraught with the promise of change, or perhaps a reckoning. Marcus shifted uncomfortably at the edge of the porch, his gaze wavering between the ground and my eyes, as if weighing the words he would say. The silence stretched between us, a taut wire ready to snap under the weight of unaddressed feelings and unspoken truths. I could feel the thrum of anxiety in my chest, but underneath it lay an unfamiliar current of determination. I was tired of being invisible, tired of tiptoeing around the truth. "Do you even see me anymore?" I finally asked, my voice trembling but resolute. "I can't help but feel like I'm fading into the background of your life." He took a deep breath, the corners of his mouth tightening. "It's not like that, Anna. I've just been busy?" I interrupted, the words spilling from my lips with more force than I intended. "You've been busy with work, but what about us? What about our family?" The words hung in the air, heavy and charged with emotion. I had longed for this moment, the chance to voice my frustrations, to peel back the layers of misunderstanding that had accumulated over the years. "I didn't mean to make you feel this way," Marcus said finally, his tone softer now, almost vulnerable. He stepped closer, the sunlight casting a warm glow on his face, revealing the fatigue etched around his eyes. I thought I was doing what was best for us. I wanted to provide. But at what cost?" I countered, stepping back from the tension that filled the space between us. "You think being a good provider means I have to be ashamed of who I am? Ashamed of you?" His eyes flashed with something, anger, perhaps, but then it melted into something more akin to regret. "I never wanted you to feel that way," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "You're the heart of this family. I know that. But lately, it's like I'm lost in my own world, trying to climb the corporate ladder, trying to make something of myself." I crossed my arms, frustration bubbling just below the surface. "And in that pursuit, you've lost sight of what we built together. You've lost sight of me." For a moment, we stood there, the air thick with tension and the echoes of our past. I thought back to the early days of our marriage, the spontaneous adventures, the laughter that filled our small apartment, the way he would spin me around the living room until we both collapsed in fits of giggles. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, a single drop that seemed to release the floodgate of emotions I had been holding back. "I'm still here, Marcus," I whispered, almost pleading. "But I need you to see me. Not just as a wife, not just as the person who takes care of everything. I need you to recognize who I am beyond those roles." He stepped closer, wiping my cheek with the back of his hand, and I caught a glimpse of the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize how far apart we had drifted. I'm ashamed of how I've treated you. I didn't mean to introduce you like that, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was harmless." "Harmless?" I echoed, my heart aching. "You don't get to decide what's harmless for me. You didn't see how it made me feel. It's not just a title, it's my identity." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I'll do better. I promise. I want to do better." I wanted to believe him, wanted to grasp onto that flicker of hope, but doubt lingered like a shadow at the edges of my thoughts. "Do you really mean that?" I asked, my voice softening as I searched his face for sincerity. "I don't want to just be an afterthought in your life. I want to be your partner, not your subordinate." "I mean it," he said firmly, taking my hands in his. The warmth of his grip grounded me, offering a semblance of comfort. "I don't want you to feel ashamed of who you are or what you contribute to our family. You are everything to me, Anna. I'm willing to fight for us." As he spoke, the vulnerability in his eyes mirrored the very emotions that had plagued me for so long. Perhaps this was a turning point, a moment where we could reclaim what had been lost. Just then, the sound of Mia's laughter echoed from the house, a pure, joyous sound that cut through the heaviness between us. I glanced back toward the door, where our daughter stood, her face lit with curiosity, peeking around the frame. She held a crayon-drawn picture of our family, vibrant colors splashed across the page, a stark contrast to the muted emotions that had clouded our hearts. "Mommy, Daddy. Come see what I made," she called, her innocence a reminder of the love that had originally brought us together. Marcus and I exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between us. "Let's go to her," I said, squeezing his hands tighter. "Let's show her that we can be better together." As we walked back inside, the shadows that had loomed over us began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of hope. We were still standing on a precipice, but perhaps now we could take a step forward into the light, ready to face whatever challenges awaited us. The light streaming through the kitchen windows felt warmer as we walked inside, the atmosphere infused with a new energy. Mia, with her crayon masterpiece in hand, stood in the center of the living room, her small figure embodying the innocence and joy we had both forgotten. The drawing featured 3 stick figures, each one rendered with exaggerated smiles, vibrant hair colors, and oversized heads. "This is us. See, Mommy? And Daddy," she beamed, holding the paper up for our inspection. "Wow, that's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to meet her eye level. The simple joy radiating from her made my heart swell, reminding me of the love that still bound us as a family. "Look, Mommy, I gave you flowers," she pointed, her finger dancing over the colorful scribbles. "And Daddy is wearing a hat." Marcus chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "I do love my hats," he said, kneeling beside us. "This is great, Mia. You're such an artist." As I watched them interact, I felt a rush of warmth flood through me. In that moment, I realized that we could weave a new narrative together, one built on love, understanding, and genuine connection. I pulled Mia into a hug, inhaling the sweetness of her hair, feeling the innocence of childhood enveloping us. "Can you teach us how to draw like that?" I asked, looking into her wide eyes filled with excitement. "Yes. But first, you have to tell me what your favorite colors are," she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "Mine is blue, like the sky," Marcus declared, a grin breaking across his face. "And mine is green, like the grass," I chimed in, my heart lightening as I embraced the moment. As we settled onto the living room floor, markers and crayons spread out around us, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter bubbled up between us, pushing away the remnants of tension and distance that had woven themselves into the fabric of our lives. We began to draw, Mia's enthusiastic narration guiding us through the process. "Now, you have to draw happy faces," she instructed, her little finger jabbing playfully at the blank page. "And they need big smiles." As I colored alongside them, I felt the barriers we had built begin to crumble. The vibrant strokes of our drawings mirrored the shades of our emotions, bold blues, greens, yellows, and pinks weaving together a tapestry of our shared experience. In the chaos of crayons and laughter, I found solace, comfort in the realization that while we had faced darkness, there was light waiting for us on the other side. After a while, Mia's laughter subsided into a peaceful silence as she focused on her drawing, leaving Marcus and me with a moment to breathe. I turned to him, our shoulders brushing against one another as we sat cross-legged on the floor. "Thank you for what you said earlier," I began, my voice soft. "For being honest. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that." He nodded, the sincerity in his eyes shining through the remnants of uncertainty. "I meant it, Anna. I want us to build something real again, together. I want to be proud of you, not ashamed." His words settled in the air between us, heavy yet liberating. "It won't be easy, but I believe we can do it. We just need to stay committed, to each other, to our family." "Yes," I replied, my heart swelling with hope. "And I'll be here to remind you of that commitment when you need it." With that, a sense of camaraderie enveloped us. We were in this together, ready to face the challenges ahead. We began to discuss our plans, weaving new goals and dreams into our conversations, trips we would take, family traditions we would revive, and even mundane activities like movie nights that would bring us closer. "Can we go to the beach?" Mia interrupted, her eyes wide with excitement. "I want to make sandcastles." I chuckled, recalling our last beach trip, A day filled with laughter, the sun setting over the horizon, casting golden hues across the water. Absolutely. We'll make the biggest sand castle ever. I promised, and the enthusiasm in Mia's voice was contagious. As the afternoon melted into evening, we finished our drawings and pinned them on the refrigerator, a vibrant collage of family pride. Each piece of art represented not only a moment shared but also a commitment to reclaiming our narrative, one brushstroke at a time. In that moment, surrounded by the laughter of my daughter and the tentative smile of my husband, I felt a deep sense of peace. The shadows of doubt and shame were still there, lurking at the edges of our lives, but they no longer defined us. We were writing a new story, one filled with understanding, love, and the promise of a future where I would never be ashamed of who I was or who we were as a family. With Marcus by my side and Mia's laughter echoing through our home, I finally understood that we could redefine ourselves. We could rebuild the love we had lost and create a family narrative that embraced every color of our shared experience. Together, we would face whatever came our way, standing strong in the light of love and commitment, ready to reclaim our happiness. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.